Moving right on. So we'll start by saying a little bit about snakes and snakebite. So there are over 2,500 species of snakes worldwide. That's a pretty significant number. And of these 2,500, less than 200 are recorded as being venomous. And whilst I'm there, it's important for you to understand that not all snakes are venomous. There are some snakes that we worry about, but there are some snakes which do not have a venom which is of any medical importance. And we'll talk a bit more about this as we go through this course. So in Zimbabwe, it is estimated that we have got approximately 76 species of snakes which emanate from 7 different families. But of these 76, only between 19 and 22 are thought to be venomous, and those which are dangerously venomous, the number goes down pretty significantly. And those are the ones that we are going to spend a bit of time talking about during this course. So in Zimbabwe, venomous snakes belong to 4 major families, which I'll look at later. So just a bit about snake venom. So it's important for you to understand that the primary purpose or function of snake venom is to enable the snake to immobilize prey so that it can be able to eat. So let that sink in for a while. So what this means is that snakes don't really want to go around biting people because the venom is a valuable resource that the snake requires in order for it to eat. And the second purpose of venom to a snake is that the venom allows the snake to be able to digest prey. I mean, as you have seen probably on National Geo or some other documentary shows, wildlife shows, snakes have a tendency of swallowing their prey whole. So the venom has got that function of breaking down and digesting the prey. So snakes don't really want to bite you, neither do they really want to kill you. It's not their primary purpose because the venom must be stored in order for the snake to be able to use it later for hunting purposes. So if you look at snake venom, it is composed of numerous toxic and non-toxic components, and more than 90% of the dry weight of the venom is protein. So it's a proteinaceous substance. And that raises a very exciting and interesting point. So it therefore means that if someone took venom, assuming that they do not have any cuts in their mouth or down their GIT tract, and they drank the venom, theoretically speaking, it should not cause any harm because proteins are digested in our gastrointestinal tract. That's a very fascinating point, I think. It's the same with insulin, perhaps digressing slightly, which if you drink insulin, by the time it gets to your stomach, it's already broken down. So you find that these snake venoms, they're made of enzymes and polypeptide toxins, and these are the ones that lead to a clinical effect. And what I have here, the picture at the bottom here, we're seeing some venom droplets coming from what is called a fang or the tooth from a snake which delivers the venom. And here we've got an example of how they milk for snake venom, which is then used later to make antivenin. We shall see this later in Unit 7, I believe. And here we've got this snake appears to be more of a constrictor, which has captured and it seems to have killed a rodent and is about to eat the meal. Moving right on. So snakebite has recently, last year but 2018, 2019, thereabouts, it has been put back on the list of prioritized or important tropical diseases or neglected tropical diseases. And according to one website, I got this from a BBC page. It says snakebite accounts for around 5.4 million. So about 5.4 million people are estimated to be bitten by snakes every year. And when you study in the literature, this number might actually be a conservative one because we get lots of snake bite which goes unreported. It is a very underreported problem. And of these, it is estimated that 100,000 people die each year as a result of snake bite. And in some areas, this is even in some areas it's much more compared to other areas. And you'd find that most of these bites they occur in the tropical regions of the world, which unfortunately are also where you find the developing countries and the poorer of the communities. And if you look at this figure, almost 500,000 people are left disabled or disfigured as a result of injuries sustained by snakebite. So it's not only about death, but some of the cytotoxic venoms, as we shall see in later units, can cause serious disfiguration and serious disability, especially to the limbs of those who are affected. So, because of these numbers, the WHO has taken renewed interest to put snakebite back onto a priority list with regards to neglected tropical diseases. So, whilst we're there, it's important right from the outset for us to have an idea of which factors are associated with snakebite. And this becomes particularly important from a public health perspective, whereby if you need to be involved in any programs to reduce snakebite, these are some of the things that you would think about. So you'd find that snakebite varies from country to country. And the major reasons or the circumstances that people find themselves when they're bitten by snakes in one country may not be the same as the major circumstances that people find themselves in another country when they're bitten by snakes. But here are some of the activities or some of the things which are related to snakebite injury. So, in many places, snakebite is associated with farming activities. And as the farmers are out doing their farmers, the farm workers, someone might not see that there's a snake and then they step on it. Or perhaps as they are plowing the field, they disturb a snake which is in its burrow and then a person is bitten. But also, the issue of time and season has been demonstrated in a number of studies that time and season are extremely important. From one study done in Zimbabwe, not one actually, quite a couple of studies done, but the most recent one was published by Tagwireyi and his colleagues in 2011 in the Central African Journal of Medicine. It would appear that in our setting, most snake bites actually occur during the darker hours of the day, from the evening time up to the night, and this might be related to issues to do with visibility. But also, some of the snakes are nocturnal hunters, and therefore, they get busy at night. And as we shall see later, one of the reasons why human beings encounter snakes is because the snakes will be out and about looking for food. And as you would know, most rodents normally come out at night, and therefore you can get snake activity increasing in the night. And then the issue of season is a very important one because most snakes, not most, all snakes are cold-blooded animals, and they tend to hibernate during the winter seasons when it is cold, and then they normally come out during the summer seasons when it starts being warm and the rain is coming out. But you've also got some occupational activities which can be related with to snakebite. For example, people who would work more in the bush or in the forests or during the night and other things like that might be at a higher risk compared to others who are working in the city during the daylight hours. So there's definitely a link with occupational activities. A link of occupational activities to snakebite, and then also the issue of endemicity and population. You'd find that there are some areas where we know that you get a certain type of snake. If you visit the rural areas of Zimbabwe, the people who stay there would tell you that if you go up that mountain, be careful because we know that there are lots of black mamba that stay there. So it talks about endemicity or the population of the snakes in that particular area. And then you have some areas where perhaps the snake populations are actually much less. As we shall see later, even looking through Zimbabwe, there are some snakes that you do not find, in the greater part of the country and might just be found in the eastern highlands of the country. And then we've got the issue of the type of snakes. You have some snakes, for example, the puff adder, which we shall see later, which is got, how can I put it? It's got a bad habit of basking in the sun, especially on footpaths where it's warm. And because of its coloration, it's quite difficult for someone to differentiate between, the footpath or to see it what is on the footpath. And as a result, many people step on the snake unknowingly. And unfortunately, it doesn't take too kindly to that and unleashes a bite soon afterwards. So the type of snake, the way it behaves, is also a factor that's associated with snake bite. And then there are other issues like gender-related issues, especially in the rural areas, where perhaps the females would be the gatherers and go out and look for firewood. And maybe in those areas you could find that there might be a difference in terms of the proportion of people who are bitten by snake bites, that is males versus females, and then other factors that you can think about or come across. We've also got some factors which affect the severity of a bite, and this is extremely important to note right from the beginning. So, sometimes snakes can bite you, but then, like I said earlier, the role of the venom is for the snake to be able to hunt for food. So, there's something which is referred to as a dry bite, where the snake bites you but then does not inject any venom into you. Or it might bite you, but then inject a negligible amount of venom into you. So that's also one factor which is not listed here on in this list which I have here. That there is something called a dry bite. That snakes can bite you, but decide not to inject you with any venom. So here I've got two major characteristics which affect the severity of a bite, and I've called them snake characteristics as well as patient characteristics. For example, with snakes, the date of last bite of feeding might be an important factor because, like we said earlier, snake venom, it's proteinaceous substances, and these take some time uh, to produce or to make in the body of the snake. So, assuming that we have 10 people lined up and the same snake, is biting each person one after the other. By the time it gets to the 10th person, it is possible that perhaps it has exhausted all its venom stores. And therefore, the severity of the snake bite in the 10th person might not be the same as the severity of the snake bite in the first person who was bitten. So that's what that is really referring to. Or even in terms of feeding, if a snake has just had a huge meal where it hunted and had to bite and envenomate a rodent, a huge rodent, it's possible that if it has, bitten a number of rodents, or it could use up the venom stores, and therefore the severity might not be that bad. Second thing is the size of the snake. And as a general rule, when we talk about venomous snakes, the bigger the snake, the bigger the venom glands. The bigger the venom glands, the more venom is in the glands. But also, the bigger the snake, the bigger the fangs, or in quotation marks, the teeth. So, what that means is that a big snake then would theoretically and actually practically inject a significantly higher amount of venom compared to a smaller one. And that's why the size of the snake matters. Not only that, the longer the teeth or the fangs, it therefore means that the deeper the venom is deposited into the body, and that in itself might cause serious effects. And then I put age of the snake and a question mark there because it's a highly debated area. There are some who are of the opinion that the younger snakes, because of inexperience, have not yet learned how to preserve their venom stores. And therefore, when the young snake bites, it injects a significantly higher amount of venom because it hasn't yet learned how to limit the venom that is going out of it. Indeed, it is true that young snakes, little snakes, can pack a powerful snake bite, and there are people who have been bitten with very serious consequences by younger snakes. But the other argument is that by virtue of the size of the snake, perhaps the amount of venom which comes into the patient might be limited. So I just left it there with a question mark. And then also the type of snake is important, as we shall see. We've got snakes which have got neurotoxic venom, and we have snakes which have cytotoxic venom. So if a snake with a strong neurotoxic venom like a black mamba bites you, we expect the severity of the bite to be much worse, because then you could end up getting to respiratory depression and die. Yet if the same person is bitten by a snake with a cytotoxic venom, perhaps a weak cytotoxic venom, then we do not expect the severity to be as bad. And then there are other things which you can probably put there and think about. Then the other issue is the issue of the patient characteristics. And you were talking about the age of the patient, the sex of the patient. The bite site is particularly important because if the higher the snake bites, especially if it's the elapids or the ones with neurotoxic envenomation, it means that the venom can spread throughout the body much quickly. Like compare someone who's bitten on the foot compared to someone who's bitten on the neck. You'd be more concerned about the one who's bitten on the neck because the venom spreads much, much quicker. The nutritional status or the health status even, or medical status of the patient, the type of drugs that they're taking are also important factors which you have to think about when it comes to severity. And then just quickly concerning snake bite in Zimbabwe. So one study by Tagwireyi and colleagues in 2002 noted that animal envenomation accounted for about a tenth of all hospital admissions due to poisoning to 8 major referral hospitals in Zimbabwe. And of these, more than 80% of animal envenomation was as a result of snakebite. So that's pretty interesting figures on snakebite. Then other bites or animal envenomations were from scorpion stings, spiders, other insects. So the current Minister of Health and Child Care, Dr. Obadiah Moyo, is quoted by the Zimbabwe Mail as having said this. It says that he expressed concern over the rise of snakebite death toll, which he said health experts should not cast a blind eye on. And looking through the local press in Zimbabwe, you'd find that there's a number of articles which have been newspaper articles, where there's been some indication that over the past few years, the cases of snakebite appear to be on the increase. And that's something that we could talk about on some other day. But for today, the take-home message is just to say, snakebite appears to be on the increase. And the health minister in May 2019, at the 72nd session of the World Health Assembly in Geneva, expressed concern over the rise of snakebite death toll, which he said health experts should not cast a blind eye on. And as you're doing this as a health expert, well, you're one of those that he was not talking about, because you're not going to cast a blind. So snakebite appears to be an increasingly important public health issue, not only in Zimbabwe, but elsewhere. Now that we've gone through the first unit, it is quiz time. So go through the section on the multiple choice section of the different quizzes and test your knowledge and see how much you've managed to get correct. Until we meet again in Unit 2, this is Professor Tagwireyi. I'm saying be Snakecuted. Bye.